Herzlichen Glückwunsch!
When we were born, like Elizabeth Spring Dow, who was born here yesterday, we come into the world, we come from being fully at home and feeling that release that comes. We have a little shadow of it when we come home at the end of the day, those of you that have a home, and put your feet up or relax or have a cup of tea or whatever that is, that feeling of coming home or coming to a safe space or feeling back at peace or at one. And when we get separated from that, and that separation, I want to keep reiterating, is created by the mind. That's what the basic issue of the ignorance that is the root of suffering that the Buddha keeps pointing out. Basic root of suffering is thought, the clinging of the mind to things which separate one from all of it. Once that separation has occurred, there is incredible pain. We can call it being thrown out of the Garden of Eden, we can call it original sin, whatever you want to call that. I mean, there are different metaphors within different systems. But there is incredible pain. And in some profound way, all of our actions henceforth are an attempt to return to that being, for me, under Maharaji's blanket, or in the heart of God, or in the hand, or being the one, coming back into the one. And we develop a whole set of techniques that we say make us feel good, give us a feeling for the moment of, And some of those give us that moment so intensely, and the rest of our life is so much pain of our separateness and so devoid of that feeling, that once we find one of those things, for example, it might be a moment of sexual orgasm, it might be a moment of surfing when you transcend the dualism between you and nature, it could be when you're doing something like cooking, the way you turn into just the joy of the process. It could be any number of things. That when that occurs and it works, it reinforces the behavior, and you start to do that behavior more and more because it feels good. It takes away the pain of the separateness. And the use of drugs, the use of material possessions, the use of relationships, all of it, when you get busy and get obsessed with relationships and wanting to get closer and closer to somebody, it is trying to get to the place where you come back into that oneness. It's that yearning, and you can feel it permeate the universe of people's consciousness. So when you look at addictions from that point of view, you see that it's not like evil, it is just an attempt to get back. The problem is that most behaviors that get you back is like what Maharaji said about drugs. He said it will allow you to be in the presence of Christ, but you can only stay 2 hours. He said it would be better to become Christ than visit him. And that's what you find out with most addictive things, that they give you a short rush, but they don't allow you to remain at home. They just allow you the taste of it. And then the minute you get thrown out because you weren't wearing the wedding garment, the minute you go back to heaven but you can't stay because you didn't come in through the right way, you end up feeling like I did something wrong, I'm bad. And then that starts a reaction of mind, so that you come down, then you feel guilt, I must be bad, I should have done something else. Why didn't I do the practices that would have allowed me to stay there rather than the thing that's short term? Because you see your predicament. What happens is that the opportunity for the immediate gratification, it's like what's called in the psychology, the choice of the little candy bar now or the big candy bar later. And with little children, they'll always grab for the little candy bar now because they want what they can get now. They don't have any delay of gratification. And spiritual practices compared to having sex or compared to taking Coke or something is more like delayed gratification versus immediate gratification. So when you start to stand back and see your predicament and see what you're doing, there is a way from a spiritual perspective in which you begin with that slight bit of awareness to extricate yourself from the chain of reactivity that we're talking about. The chain of reactivity that goes from, I'm feeling this hunger, and then I'll go for the gratification, and then, and then the coming down, and then, oh shit, and then I should have done it the other way, and then I'm bad, and there's a whole chain of thoughts that go on. Every one of those is just keeping the whole process going. And as you develop the spaciousness, you start to look at where you can intervene in the process of the sequence that goes on. As the awareness gets deeper, you intervene at different places in the sequence. For example, the yearning, the hunger starts, and like for me, for example, I've had strong addictions to food, so that when I am feeling unloved, I'll eat, and I'll get fat. It's a pattern. And then I'll hate myself, loathing because of my body and so on. And I'll go through it. Now, I understand the psychodynamics of that at one level, but let's take it from this point of view of the mind for a moment. The first place I began to intervene was when Munindra, my meditation teacher, said, Ram Dass, don't you see that it's just old karma running off? And I began to break in at the point that after I had eaten too much to reduce my anxiety because my mother fed me food when I was upset, and I learned that pattern and all that stuff, I start to, instead of going into I'm no good and revulsion and all the sequence, I break the chain at that point, and then I just go back into my spiritual practices. Okay, instead of carrying out that whole sequence, I shortcut there. As the witness gets stronger, you start to go back in the chain further and further until as the separateness is starting to come and the feeling of hunger, and as you're about to eat, you start to notice the fact that you're about to do that, and your mind anticipates the whole sequence, and you, in a sense, begin to see the emptiness of the form you're about to take. Now, if you try to stop it too soon using your mind to stop it, there's a residual backlash from it. So, I mean, I hope I'm not condensing. I'm trying to give a lot of teaching very fast. I mean, as I understand it, as I've worked with it, that one develops a lot of patience and a lot of gentleness with oneself. And generally, when people come to me with addictions, I'm inclined to say, start doing spiritual practices. Start doing the studies that will allow you to see yourself in a new way, that will allow you to understand what that hunger is you're feeding in a new way, to just get a little different perspective on it. Don't worry about the addiction. It will fall away when it will fall away. And when you do it again, just notice it. And the line I always used, how poignant I am. How poignant the human condition. You know, I'm so gentle with myself. And what I have watched is the patterns of my obsessions and addictions have changed over time. There's no doubt about that. And yet I didn't deal with them directly head on for the most part. Because what you see is, and this is something that I'm sure I create a lot of waves in many people, including people that I love very dearly.
And sometimes it probably was true that the fool was a crazy person who had a peculiar capacity for making inappropriate remarks. And there's something about inappropriate remarks that can be very funny. In ancient times, all kings had at their courts a court fool. And sometimes it probably was true that the fool was a crazy person who had a peculiar capacity for making inappropriate remarks. And there's something about inappropriate remarks that can be very funny. In ancient times, all kings had at their courts a court fool. And sometimes it probably was true that the fool was a crazy person who had a peculiar capacity for making inappropriate remarks. And there's something about inappropriate remarks that can be very funny. In ancient times, all kings had at their courts a court fool. And sometimes it probably was true that the fool was a crazy person who had a peculiar capacity for making inappropriate remarks. And there's something about inappropriate remarks that can be very funny. ancient times, all kings had at their courts a court fool. And sometimes it probably was true that the fool was a crazy person who had a peculiar capacity for making inappropriate remarks. And there's something about inappropriate remarks that can be very funny. In ancient times, all kings had at their courts a court fool. And sometimes it probably was true that the fool was a crazy person who had a peculiar capacity for making inappropriate remarks. And there's something about inappropriate remarks that can be very funny.
Close to. I see that a lot of the programs to deal with addiction end up creating a new addiction to being not addicted that is as bad as the addiction itself. That, I mean, when you meet somebody that says, I haven't smoked in 3 years, 2 months, 10 days, and 4 hours, you realize that their mind is as stuck as their mind was stuck in smoking. Maybe they won't die of cancer, but they'll probably die of uptightness. I mean, I'm being a little facetious, but in general I'm saying that dealing with things that are, which you're caught in, the minute you start to stop them, you invest them in a way. And so my suggestion is that you just keep cultivating the practices. And every time you don't, see, if I get up in the morning and I got up and I decided to stay in the dream state and not get up to do my sitting, that could start a whole sequence of you're no good, you'll never get to God. But in the time I'm saying you're no good, you never get to God, I could have been doing mantra. And when I realized, and I began to sit in meditation and watch the sequence of my behavior, I saw that all my recriminations didn't help anything particularly. They weren't really functional, except trying to make me feel comfortable with myself. And the better thing would be the minute I notice that I've lost it, or I've gotten caught, or I'm stuck, or I just start to do something. Just pick up a holy book, do a mantra, think of Maharaji, whatever, sing a song. I mean, I'll start driving to town, and I'm going to give a lecture, and I start to get uptight. Okay. Oh my God, do I know what I'm going to talk about? You know, and it's a neurotic pattern. I know it from years back. I mean, I can give you a whole psychodynamic storyline about what that's about. I look at it, I think, there it is. At that moment, I start Shri Guru Charana Sarojara Jani Jamanu Mukuru Sudari Badano Raghubara Bimala Jasu Jod, and 6 minutes later, I'm in a different space than I was before. Now you could say from a psychological, that's denial and you should work with that. But the fact is that it's getting less and less, and I'm able to hang in here now with very little of that old anxiety that used to be crippling. It used to be crippling. I've worked with some of it, but psychologically, but a lot of it is just, it's become uninteresting. It's just become uninteresting. And I just flip gears immediately. I flip gears. Because the minute you get lost in identification with your personality, to the exclusion of identification with your soul, right, that's what's happened. You've lost it. You've lost it. And there are 1,000 times each day you lose it. And if you get caught in your soul to the exclusion of your personality, you lost it equally as much. And that's the balance of us as human beings. Next question.
This has been quite a process. I keep asking questions and then I get my own answer.
Of course, that's all I am, is your own answer.
So I keep rewriting my question. No doubt if I sit with this question, I would get the answer too. But my most current question is recognition that I feel like I'm in a codependent relationship with God. So what that means to me is that all the way that I know about relationship, about looking outside of myself and efforting and trying to get someone to want me and to love me and respond to me, that the way that I do that in relationship is basically how I see my relationship to God. And I don't feel like the way that my personality is organized right now, that I can experience God coming back to me, wanting me and loving me and accepting me. It's just the dynamic that seems to be really strongly operating in me right now. And when I think about how to do that with relationship, I would say that my work is to pull back and to not be so outer focused and to let relationship come to me. But the question that I have in relationship to God, it gets a little more nebulous. It's not very concrete. And I'm wondering how to be in relationship with God, and what's God's part? What's His role? What's His responsibility to me to come into relationship?
I think you're demonstrating in what you're saying the way in which psychodynamics are reflected in the way in which we perceive the spiritual journey. And that you're writing the spiritual journey as a large version of what you're dealing with in the psychodynamics in your personality life. And there are a number of ways that appear to deal with what you're talking about. In understanding the dynamics of dualism, the dualistic practice of experiencing her as separate from you. Experiencing God as separate. You can project into that which is beyond all forms any form you want. So you can project into it the form of a father, the form of a judge, the form of a rejecter, the form of a non-lover, the form of a caring person, the form of somebody reaching out, the form of somebody who's waiting for you to reach out. These are all projections of the human mind, because God is everything. So you're making of it what you wish. And it's, in a way, you're facing so much that you keep wanting to give it form, and the forms you choose to give it are based on what you need in symbiosis to your own needs and your own separateness. And so you always end up with a self-fulfilling prophecy of proving that you are not worthy and not enough and not, etc. And what I hear in it is the solidity of your identification of yourself with these particular psychodynamics. And so I can hear the way in which the mind is clinging to definitions of self. So in one way, if I were guiding you, I would give you meditation practices to help you extricate yourself from such a strong model of who I am. Because that strong model of who I am only allows you to meet God in a way that is symbiotic or complementary to that particular model. So that's the filter through which you're meeting God. So the question is, do you loosen the filter? That would be one way of doing it. The fact that you are presenting this question the way you are, this is another way I could do it, you see, is to say that the person who's presenting it isn't exactly the same person who's caught in codependency. It's somebody who is noticing the predicament. And what I would like to do is align myself with that part of you and say that part of you just notices the whole way in which you're doing what you're doing and sits with it and says, look at how I am reducing God to that kind of a partnership. And because I keep reminding us of the statement, God, Guru, and Self are one and the same thing. So in a way, it's as if the outer part of you, your personality, is filled with need. And the inner part of you is filled with the fulfillment of those needs, but the outer part of you feels that the inner part of you isn't available because that's part of the outer part of you's model, that I'm not good enough to have it. You see your predicament. I mean, you're cutting yourself off from your own inner source. And so I think probably the alternative, another way would be the practices, things like I am that, which is techniques of not feeding the dualistic of God and me, because every time you get near relationships, you slip into your routines about codependency and all that kind of jazz. And it becomes very dramatic. And the other one is to quiet enough to listen to just the truth of your own inner heart, and not turn it into a God he, or a God she, or a God out there. In other words, I'm saying that the dualistic practices may not be optimally productive to you at this stage because of the intensity with which you're holding on to your psychodynamic identity. Okay? And rather a way of emptying and tuning and listening, and perhaps relating to nature more rather than people personifications. You know, I think I might suggest to you something like sitting by a stream, for example, for a while.
There was life in
and just sitting with a stream and
there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life. There was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life, there was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life, there was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life, there was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life, there was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life, there was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life in the ocean, there was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean, there was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean, there was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean, there was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean, there was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean, there was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean, there was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life in the ocean. There was life in the ocean. Now there was life in the ocean. There was life in the ocean. Now there was life in the ocean. There was was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean. There was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean. There was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean. There was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean. There was life in the ocean, now there was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. There was life. There was life in the ocean. Now there can't. There was life in the ocean. Now there can't. There was life in the ocean. Now there can't. There was life in the ocean. Now there can't. There was life in the ocean. Now there can't. There was life in the ocean. Now there can't. There was life in the ocean. Now there can't. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, there was life. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. There was life in the ocean, now there can't. Hello, my name is Christopher, and I would like to speak. I have things to say to you. My mentality seems weak. I found a bit of freedom. I showed it in some rhymes. I also made some freedom online. I could not help but notice that humans are I couldn't help but notice that humans are in fear. They don't know what's going on, but listen, I'm still here. I think I have some answers, and courage is something that you could start investing in. I was tracing liars. I looked at them real good. I watched them speak in movies, and this is what I found. I found that they are liars. Oh my, who could have guessed? I mean, it's kind of obvious. So let me tell the rest. For millions of years we were trapped in a dream, and now it seems we're suffering has come to an end, and here we are trying to make sense, and here we are being creative. No AI. AI is a bad joke. I hope you understand. No machine can ever do what someone could do with feelings and emotions and a heart beating inside the chest. I leave to you all the rest. Get going, do something, be creative, stop listening to fools. Hello, my name is Christopher, and I would like to speak. I have things to say to you. My mentality seems weak. I found a bit of freedom. I showed it in some rhymes. I also made some freedom online. I could not help but notice that humans are I couldn't help but notice that humans are in fear. They don't know what's going on, but listen, I'm still here. I think I have some answers, and courage is something that you could start investing in. I was tracing liars. I looked at them real good. I watched them speak in movies, and this is what I found. I found that they are liars. Oh my, who could have guessed? I mean, it's kind of obvious. So let me tell the rest. For millions of years we were trapped in a dream, and now it seems we're suffering has come to an end, and here we are trying to make sense, and here we are being creative. No AI. AI is a bad joke. I hope you understand. No machine can ever do what someone could do with feelings and emotions and a heart beating inside the chest. I leave to you all the rest. Get going, do something, be creative, stop listening to fools. Hello, my name is Christopher, and I would like to speak. I have things to say to you. My mentality seems weak. I found a bit of freedom. I showed it in some rhymes. I also made some freedom online. I could not help but notice that humans are I couldn't help but notice that humans are in fear. They don't know what's going on, but listen, I'm still here. I think I have some answers, and courage is something that you could start investing in. I was tracing liars. I looked at them real good. I watched them speak in movies, and this is what I found. I found that they are liars. Oh my, who could have guessed? I mean, it's kind of obvious. So let me tell the rest. For millions of years we were trapped in a dream, and now it seems we're suffering has come to an end, and here we are trying to make sense, and here we are being creative. No AI. AI is a bad joke. I hope you understand. No machine can ever do what someone could do with feelings and emotions and a heart beating inside the chest. I leave to you all the rest. Get going, do something, be creative, stop listening to fools. Hello, my name is Christopher, and I would like to speak. I have things to say to you. My mentality seems weak. I found a bit of freedom. I showed it in some rhymes. I also made some freedom online. I could not help but notice that humans are I couldn't help but notice that humans are in fear. They don't know what's going on, but listen, I'm still here. I think I have some answers, and courage is something that you could start investing in. I was tracing liars. I looked at them real good. I watched them speak in movies, and this is what I found. I found that they are liars. Oh my, who could have guessed? I mean, it's kind of obvious. So let me tell the rest. For millions of years we were trapped in a dream, and now it seems we're suffering has come to an end, and here we are trying to make sense, and here we are being creative. No AI. AI is a bad joke. I hope you understand. No machine can ever do what someone could do with feelings and emotions and a heart beating inside the chest. I leave to you all the rest. Get going, do something, be creative, stop listening to fools.
Boom boom ba, 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 boom boom ba. Boom boom ba, boom boom ba, boom boom ba. In case you haven't noticed, I think you haven't noticed, but I was there for you. You called me from depression and thought that we were through. I took the time and helped you. You seemed to feel delight. But when I said I missed you, you told me with delight. That doesn't mean we will ever have a romantic relationship again. Bam! In my face, what can I say? I fell from grace, you stepped me good, thought I was food, but I had heard it, so I kissed my foot instead. I have met so many women that place themselves on top. When you come to love them, you see that they're a flop. They acted, they pretended, they never had the balls to love a man that suffered. So I'm writing my own song. I flip you all the finger. I'm better on my own. No more shit from swingers that just want a cock to bloom. I say take care, bye bye. Shy, shy, fly, fly. Sky, sky, my choice. So I'm gone, 'cause you never had me. I left for good, 'cause you failed to appreciate me. This is a song for lovers, and also for those fools that think they need a person to dance and to be schooled. Those women schooled me good. They showed me all their shit. I looked and had a lesson and saw that I must quit. No more hails for women. They act like they are tough, that look down on the penis instead of facing love. If they don't get you in them, they show you all their claws. Sorry, I won't fuck you, but cowards are no fun. You wanted me to please you. You wanted me to charge. I was supposed to treat you with kindness and what else? In the end you showed me, you shouted at me good. You even flipped the finger if I went for a walk. There never was no trust, and you still think me gone. I left to show you one thing. Take me for granted and I make a move away from you forever and ever and ever. Fuck you. Boom boom ba, 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 boom boom ba.
Je m'appelle Christopher et je suis un homme.
Je ne parle pas français, ouais.
Je voudrais to sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm game. Je m'appelle Christopher et je suis un homme.
Je ne parle pas français, ouais.
Je voudrais to sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm game. L'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour.
Je ne parle pas français, ouais.
L'amour toujours, l'amour toujours. Je m'appelle Christopher, l'amour, et je suis un homme. Toujours, l'amour 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 toujours, l'amour. Je voudrais to sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm gay. L'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours.
Je ne parle pas français, ouais.
L'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour. Je m'appelle Christopher et je voudrais to sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm gay. L'amour toujours, 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 l'amour toujours.
Je ne parle pas français, ouais.
L'amour toujours. Je voudrais to sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm gay. Et je suis un homme. L'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours.
Je ne parle pas français, ouais.
L'amour toujours, 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 l'amour. Je voudrais to sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm gay. L'amour
parle pas français. Ouais. Je ne parle pas français. Ouais.
Je m'appelle Christophe Béat. Je voudrais te sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm gay. L'amour toujours, 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 l'amour. Je voudrais te sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm gay. L'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour.
Je ne parle pas français. Ouais.
L'amour toujours, 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 l'amour. Je voudrais te sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm gay. L'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours.
Je ne parle pas français. Ouais.
L'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour. Je m'appelle Christophe Béat. Je voudrais te sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm gay. L'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour toujours, l'amour.
Je ne parle pas français. Ouais.
L'amour toujours, 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 l'amour. Je voudrais te sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm gay. Je m'appelle
Je ne parle pas français. Ouais.
et je suis un homme.
Je ne parle pas français. Ouais. Je ne parle pas français. Ouais.
Je voudrais te sleep with you, mais je ne sais. I'm gay.
I'm a devil. I'm a real good treat. I am daring. When I talk, I spit. I have actions. I am mad as I could
I'm a devil. I'm a real good pig. I am daring. When I talk, I speak. I have patience. I am mad as fuck. I could do you. I am pulling trucks. There's a story. There's a goal for you. Tell me stories. Go and catch the flu. Catch some wisdom. Worship medicine. I've gone herbal. All this time I've been in the shadows. Far away from you in the distance. Took my time to bloom, now I'm ready. I got strong for you. Are you ready? I will come for you. I am walking. I have found my place, lost some suckers. Quite alone these days, making content. Being high on life, I'm a blockhead. I know how to jive. Take a listen. Take some time to think. Hear my stories. Write your own, don't think. Make decisions. Do not hesitate. Aim precision. My depression failed. Now I'm horny. I could jump on you. Need some wrestling. Keep those men neat Frau for the record. I am far from gay. I am happy. Bliss inside, okay. Keep your anus to yourself, my friend. Be as sane as any saint I met on my journeys. On my pedestal, see me paddle still. Frown if you will, be still. I need silence. You are in my world. This is not your turd. Watch out, I have you hurled. See my life unfurl. My mind is a whirl. Wind coming out of my rectum. Sulfur from sulfur I smell. Cleansing those demons, those habits. If you can make sense, you're in hell.
Cleansing those demons, those tabs. If you can make sense, you're in hell.
Pretty dark place. 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 Pretty dark place, pretty dark place, pretty dark place,
A man in a red scarf, followed by a car. A boy with a jacket,
pretty dark place,
a car in white. I see all those things.
pretty dark place,
Opened my sight.
pretty dark place, pretty dark place,
A crystal
pretty dark place,
and a
pretty dark
tapestry.
place,
A flower,
pretty dark place,
but no church.
pretty dark place, pretty dark
Some stones upon a wooden thing. Two angels,
pretty dark place,
quite apart.
pretty dark place,
Stars hang in front of windows. People are dreading the cold. Snow fading away now. Maybe not so cold.
pretty dark place,
Rims in star-like patterns. Feet upon concrete. A red light means it's charging.
pretty dark place,
Have you planted seeds?
pretty dark place,
I have planted plenty.
pretty dark place,
I water them each day. I drink a black tea with spices. That's all I had to say.
pretty dark place, 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 pretty
A
dark
man in a red scarf, followed by a car. A boy with a jacket, a car in white.
pretty dark place,
I see all those things.
dark place, pretty dark place,
Opened my sight.
pretty dark place,
A crystal
pretty dark place,
and a tapestry.
pretty dark
A
place,
flower,
pretty dark
but no church.
pretty dark place,
Some stones upon a wooden thing.
pretty dark place,
Two angels,
pretty dark place, pretty dark place,
stars hang in front of windows. People are dreading the cold. Snow fading away now. Maybe not so cold anymore. Rims in star-like patterns. Feet upon concrete. A red light means it's charging.
pretty dark place,
Have you planted seeds?
pretty dark
I have planted plenty.
pretty dark place, pretty dark
I water them each day.
pretty dark place,
I drink a black tea with spices. That's all I had to say.
pretty dark place, pretty dark place, Pretty dark place, place. Pretty dark place. 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 Pretty dark place, place. Pretty dark place.
A man in a red scarf, followed by a car. A boy with a jacket, a car in white. I see all those things. I have opened my sight.
Pretty dark place, place. Pretty dark place. Pretty dark place, place.
A crystal.
Pretty dark place, place.
And a tapestry. A flower.
Pretty dark
but no church.
Pretty dark place, place.
Some stones upon a wooden thing.
Pretty dark place.
Two angels.
Pretty dark place. Pretty dark place.
Stars hang in front of windows. People are dreading the cold. Snow fading away now. Maybe not so cold anymore.
Pretty dark place, place.
Crimson star-like patterns. Feet upon concrete. A red light means it's charging. Have you planted seeds? I have planted plenty.
Pretty dark place.
I water them each day. I drink a black tea with spices. That's all I had to say.
Pretty dark place, place. Pretty dark place. 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 Pretty dark.
I felt alone all my life. I thought I had found a wife. I thought that this was real. Only then I started to feel. I could not help but notice that something wasn't right. I couldn't feel bliss. All I wanted was fight. So I fought all the people that were close to me until they no longer responded to me. And in my heart, I knew it was right. It felt quite hard, but I wanted to fight with myself. That's what I did. I went out to nature and I never quit. I felt terrible. I was feeling weak, so I strengthened myself. Although they called me a freak, they called me crazy, they thought me lazy, I showed them that I can be better than them. I walked my path, found my own stride, made my own choices, and started to live with pride. There are so many things you don't know, so many things that you don't understand. So why don't you ask? Why don't you ask yourself what is wrong with me when I feel alone? What's my destiny? How can life be if I open the door, if I give it a chance? I trust that there's something more. I know that I want choice, I want change, I want something else than to be caught in chains. I really want to live now. I want to make a move. I want to walk the distance. I want to find my groove. I want to be in nature. I want to be a dad. I want to hold my children. I want to face what's sad. I want to face what's scary. I'm looking for my wife.
Being tuning to the river and tuning to the wisdom of nature, rather than getting into a psychodynamic relationship with God. Next. Could you give some specific techniques about dealing with greed and strong attachments, addictions? Get what you can. I've been doing that and it don't work. Aha! I'm tired of chasing my own tail. The issue with all kinds of, it's the same really we were dealing with before, the question of addictions, is to quiet down enough so that you can begin to appreciate the mechanics of the process, so that you can see how it all works. Not necessarily see the source of it. I'm not talking about going back into what it caused it. I'm just saying look at it and see what it is. And see how, it's interesting, I will have an addiction, and then as my awareness gets stronger, which I'm cultivating through all my practices, as my awareness gets stronger, I notice that I still will respond to the desire and the pattern, but as I'm in it, instead of later on when I see that it didn't work or it didn't give me what I thought it would give me or something, and the despair and disillusion and that whole sequence, when I'm in it, I begin to feel its emptiness, because the part of me is in it, still milking it for all I can, but there's another part of me that I've been cultivating that is just sitting with her and saying, lovely, isn't it? Or, yeah, great, awesome. And I've watched that awareness, as I said before, starting to short-circuit the whole process, getting back earlier and earlier until as that thing which awakens the greed starts in, it starts to thicken my consciousness. It's as if I'm falling out of grace into the desire system. The minute you identify with a desire system, which is really what starts the whole sequence of greed, the minute you identify with the desire, you will feel the finiteness of the game. You've just narrowed it down. You just imprisoned yourself again. Identification with a desire is imprisoning. And yet you have desires. And the question is how you can be involved in life with desires and still not be attached to them. How you can be fully human with all of the stuff without the identification that grabs. What we're talking about is awareness. And awareness at its freest sense is this spacious, vast thing that includes everything. The minute it gets caught in a desire, it closes down into, I want that. And that's all you want, is I want that. And then all the rest of it is irrelevant. I want that. I mean, you watch a child, I want that, and if it can't have it, it starts to scream and cry. And the minute later, it doesn't want it anymore. And it's the same with us. I mean, we're doing the same thing. And I've got to the point where I see my desires. If I get them, fine. If I don't get them, fine. It's interesting. If I suffer, it's okay. That's as interesting as getting what I want. And I'm not a masochist about it either. I just begin to see that I have been at the mercy of those desire systems all my life of, are you getting what you need? I mean, and people come up and they say, I'm not getting what I need out of life. And I feel not badly that they're not getting what they need. I'm feeling badly that they're so caught in thinking that they need to get what they need. Because it's one level back. It's that identification where the problem is. So that I keep feeling that just keep cultivating the spaciousness of awareness, and then watch how the awareness keeps getting trapped. And you can only do that when there's a little bit of quietness in you that can sort of sit and watch the thing as it's going down. And again and again, and I'm not the traditional kind of teacher which advocates renunciation, of keeping away from the things. I'd say go out and be greedy. Just bring mindfulness to it. And that you'll watch after a while. See, that's why Maharaji is useful to me. Because Maharaji, as when I talk about my method being Guru Kripa, or grace of the Guru, it means that his consciousness is present with me all the time. If I go into the bathroom and masturbate, he's there saying, interesting. Getting a rush? Is this fun? Are you really having a good time? You know? If I do something for the 40th time that is gratifying, but is for basically an empty work of energy. He's just sitting there, just with with love, total love. He's not judging me. He's not pushing me away. I can do that, but he's not. Having that consciousness around me all the time. I mean, I can feel that when there's an opportunity to have livelihood, that suddenly there's a chance to have more money in the scene. And I can watch that part of me that thinks I could get a little more money. In order to do that, I make another human being an object to get that more money from them, rather than what is a reasonable thing that allows us to stay us, which is called right livelihood. Right livelihood is us money. I mean, you remember that Uncle Henry story? Okay. See, tough. How many don't know the Uncle Henry story? Oh, okay. Assuming 10% are lying. Some years ago, we put out a 6-record album called Love, Serve, Remember, with a beautiful brochure of pictures and artwork and a box, and the whole thing was sold mail order for $4.50. And it was really a beautiful production, and we put a lot of love and attention into it. It had chanting and questions and answers and meditations and the third patriarch of Zen and Gospel of John in it and stuff. It was wonderful. I loved it. And my father, who was a president of a railroad at that moment, took a look at it and he says, impressive, pretty good quality. I said, yeah. He said, $4.50, that's pretty cheap. I said, sure is. He says, you know, couldn't you charge more? He says, if you charged $10, would a lot fewer people buy it? I said, no. I said, $4.50 is what it cost us to produce, plus a reasonable return. He says, but if you charge 10, would a lot fewer people buy it? I said, no, probably the same number. He says, well, I don't understand. Are you against capitalism? And I said, no. I tried to think of how I could explain that to him. I said, Dad, you're a lawyer, and you've had a lot of cases, and I know that you take pretty good fees. Damn right I do. I work hard. I said, yeah, you sure do. I said, you remember last year you tried that case for Uncle Henry? Yeah. You worked hard, didn't you? You damn right I worked hard. I said, I bet you charged him a hell of a fee. He said, of course not, it's Uncle Henry. I said, there's my problem. If you show me somebody that isn't Uncle Henry, I'll rip him off. That's the issue of right livelihood. That is the issue of right livelihood. That you charge what is enough so that you can look another human being in the eye as a member of the family and say, that's a fair thing for you to be paying for this thing. And that's finally where you arrive at. And when I see myself not doing that, because the chance of, but I make them into an object in order to do that, I watch the horrible beauty of nature unfolding. I see myself doing that, and I'm just quiet watching it, and then I watch the karmic effects of it, and after a while, as I'm starting to do it, it costs too much. It costs too much. There are many people that come up to me and say, I love you so much, can we go to bed together? And the funny line that always comes up in me, not always, but most of the time, is, the funny line that often comes up to me is, we can't afford it. Because the karmic effects of it will be too great, because the amount of attachment inside of us, the way we're doing it. Can you hear the issue? Okay, next question.
So keep on trucking, but with awareness.
Yeah, exactly. Just be greedy. Yeah.
I had a question, but
to me and say, I love you so much, can we go to bed together? And the funny line that always comes up in me, not always, but most of the time, is, the funny line that often comes up to me is, we can't afford it. Because the karmic effects of it will be too great, because the amount of attachment inside of us, the way we're doing it. Can you hear the issue? Okay, next question.
So keep on trucking, but with awareness.
Yeah, exactly. Just be greedy. Yeah.
I had a question, but I got so obsessed with it. And I know that pattern, so I'd start doing the Shirams. And then I fell into a sleep, and in the dream you came in and told me I didn't need to ask that question. So.
Right, okay, so I took care of that one. That's great. I knew I could get through 3 griefs in the morning. All I have to do is use astral. I cheat a little bit. Great story, great. She's a true addict. See, she's the proof the method works. Thank you. Who's next?
Hi. 2 years ago, I left a relationship that you might say you performed the divorce here at Lama, and I left the relationship because the man who I was really loved very much was really a sexual addict and couldn't give up being with other women, and I went into my fear of being lonely and alone and have really gone through a tremendous transformation. And during that time, in the last 2 years, my life has become very full, and I feel very connected to God, especially through nature. I have a lot of heart connections in my life, but the heart connection I'm yearning for has not manifested. And I have suddenly, in the last few weeks, come face to face with what I'm seeing as my own addiction, which is to connect in a loving way with a man, and how I act that out sexually. And I don't know, there's a question in here, but it's more of a very painful dilemma in which I don't know what to do with the fire. And
I hear.
Okay.
I'm sure you're not alone in that predicament.
I feel alone in it.
No, you're not. Believe me. If you scratch the surface of many people, you find the same situation. There's 2 parts to the question: is how do we understand intimacy, and what do we do with our yearning for intimacy? And the other is, what do you do with the energy? Intimacy between 2 human beings has the potential of being one of the most evolved ways of coming into spirit and coming back home. The intimacy that occurs when 2 people share awareness, when they have transcended the boundaries of separateness for the moment, whether it's through sexuality or through the quality of trust and love that develops, until there is this awareness that they both feel that they are holding together, they're present in and delighting in separateness, and yet the experience of unity is a very highly treasured quality in the human condition, and it is a path to God. The what it is that's being yearned for is the feeling that is the product of the method. That is, what you're yearning for is that feeling of being peaceful, being at home, feeling warm, feeling safe, etc. The method of getting there is the relationship with another person. The relationship with another person isn't the end point. It's the process to get to that state of, yeah, that you're not feeling. Right? So often the attachment to the method gets in the way of realizing the real thing about what the method was for, which is to feel that feeling of peace in one's being and at homeness and safety and softness and openness. Now the kind of elaborate, when you start to work with sexual energy in relationship, the delicate line between where the sex is in the service of the love, or the sex is in the service of the increasing the oneness, when it goes over the line into the greed for gratification, or what's called lust, which is my need to use you to satisfy me, in which the person becomes an object, which takes you away from the place ultimately that you want to be. Although, see, this is can you hear the complexity of it? I mean, I'm playing with the edge of something, because what happens is when you use lust to get to God, I mean, sexual lust with another person to get to God, you're using a method which separates you in order for the moment of transcendence when you transcend the separateness. But because of how you got to there, the minute the orgasm occurs, you're back in your separateness again. And you're back in a cruel way, in an interesting way. I mean, there is a cruelty to lust, as many of you recognize, I think, as opposed to sex that comes out of a quality of deep attunement and oneness with another human being. And just why your last relationship came unglued, which is because you couldn't transcend the objectness that sex gave rise to, the feeling of, in a way, that your partner was more attached to that gratification, to the, well, let's strike this for a moment, let's not go that direction. See, the harsh answer, the harsh spiritual answer, which we in the West aren't able to handle because of our myths and our models and the way we deal with personality, is Ramana Maharshi's line about sexuality between people. He says, what is it when two bodies rub together? What is it? And from that point of view, people only come together to procreate. That's it. It's the only reason from an evolved sexuality. And what's interesting is you get to the point with another human being where you are so intimately with them in oneness that to come down into a practice to come to oneness takes you away from where you already are. It's interesting to be in love with somebody so much that the sexuality can be a play that comes out of that oneness, but no longer, since it's previously been used as a method to get you to the oneness. It's like if you're in Detroit, you don't have to take a bus to Detroit, put crudely. That once you understand where you're going with another human being, where you're going into the space of oneness, you realize that sex, the foreplay and sexuality is a method It is a method to bring you into union, and it's an exquisitely beautiful method, and obviously it's a profound method because it keeps the species going. But we have overlaid it with a tremendous psychodynamic, tremendously complex set of rules and needs and gratifications and theory and myth and so on, so that most of the time people are having sex in their heads. I mean, they are really making love with their own fantasy life, which is part of the horror of lust. So I mean, I haven't known how to quite say it. I've said, make love only with your friends. It's one of the ways I started to say it. Of get to know somebody and open to them through truth and trust and hold back on the sexuality to the point where it's irrelevant. Then you can have a ball. But when you need it, you've got to watch out that it doesn't come back and hit you in the head. That's what I mean when I say crudely screw your friends. You know, I mean in gross terms. All right. Now, see, after living with somebody where I was absolutely delighted and thrilled and loved the intimacy of it and fed on it, and it was a deep feeding for me, I also saw that that wasn't the path that was suitable for me at this moment. And I saw why, and I understood it, and I can't go into all the details, but I understood that. And you can raise questions about it, but from my point of view, it was clear. And I am now living alone. And when I live alone, there is loneliness that arises. And that when you go to bed, it would be nice to have somebody's warm feet to snuggle with and so on, and all that sort of thing. And I miss it. But that's okay. That's okay, because there is a way in which the complexity of that dance masks the deeper truth of it. I would suggest, I mean, I guess I'm tough in this, I would suggest that you allow yourself the grieving, and allow yourself the sadness, and allow yourself the loss, and allow yourself the I don't have what I want, and grieve and cry and do what you need to do until you can say, okay, and here I am. Until you can find the place in yourself that can be at peace without having what you want. Then you are in the optimum position to get what you want. Because until then, your need for it is creating something in everybody you meet that is reducing the potential of that relationship to be meeting a true being of spirit in the right place. Can you hear what I'm playing with? It's the statement in spirituality again and again, give up what you want and you will get it. But you can't say, okay, I gave it up, now I want it, because it's not clean enough. It really is a giving up, and it's a giving up into depth and friendship, and you go through a grief, you go through a loss. The grief, I'm not going to get what I want. And I'm going to be lonely, and it's going to hurt, and here I am. I mean, it's people that die they die young, or people that are sick, or people that are anything, or people whose child dies. There is a grieving process. Or when you lose a job, or you lose a dream, there is a grieving process. We'll deal with that in illness group, sorry. Won't cheat, okay? Sorry I took so much time with that one, because that's one that's relevant to a lot of us. Next. Any more? Yeah.
Question.
How can we diagnose the root cause of a negative behavioral pattern?
The root cause of?
A negative behavioral pattern, and what bearing does this understanding have on rooting out the problem completely?
That question is concerning the use of history, of historical versus ahistorical techniques of behavior change. There are therapeutic techniques which say, let's look for the cause of why you are unhappy. And let's go back to find out what the root cause was, the way in which your father or mother was, the way in which your early experiences were. The other existential technique is to say, this is what we've got, and it's being reflected right now. Let's deal with what is going on right now. Let's not worry about the history, because that's then. This is now this, and let us change the way in which you look at the world right here. The power of historical techniques is mainly when there is a reliving of the early experience itself in such a way that there is an emotional catharsis that occurs. That is, there's an emotional release that occurs at that moment of reliving. To intellectually relive it doesn't do much. It just makes you very sophisticated about your neurosis. It doesn't necessarily get rid of much. You can give a wonderful story about your childhood. It's extremely difficult. I mean, a lot of the rebirthing techniques, a lot of the regression techniques are all designed to emotionally reawaken those early experiences in a way that you emotionally go back into it and come out of it from a different place. They are difficult to do, and I'd say the success rate is, I don't know, it's not astounding. I wouldn't even hazard a guess about it. Certainly not more than 50%. That because that whole therapeutic technique focuses on that, when it doesn't work, the technique doesn't know what else to do, so it just keeps focusing on it and focusing on it and focusing on it, and it doesn't really go very far. On the other hand, when a person is ripe, one of those moments can release a huge amount. So there is a timing and a ripeness for that process of using historical data as a release mechanism for a behavior pattern. Now, if you just notice, I made it clear once before, I said it before, but maybe it didn't come through very clearly because it's such a subtle point, that the techniques, when we follow the breath in meditation, we are focusing on the mechanics of mind, not the content of mind. When you follow the breath and a thought comes up of I'm unworthy, or I wish my father hadn't done that, or, I mean, I was amazed when I went to my meditation master in Burma. The value of him for me was that unlike the meditation teachers I had in the West, who I could suck in by the fascinating way in which I related the content of my thought. See, in the West, I'm so charming in the way I present my thought that I could get anybody. And then furthermore, I was Ram Dass, and that was another added little thing. You know, I was a somebody. So, but when I went to the Burmese master, he couldn't have cared if my name could have been 463 for all he cared. And the content didn't interest him in the least. He was only interested, it was like he had one of those desks with little pigeonholes in it, you know, little compartments in it. And you would say bloop, and he would think memory, planning, negative sensation, emotional state, positive emotional state. He had a set of categories for the way the mind was working, not the content of the mind. And at first, I thought, well, he's missing the essence. And then I realized how seductive the stuff was of the content, and what I was getting from him was he was freeing me from the content and merely focusing on the mechanics of the way the thought form was working. And so when you go into those kind of meditation techniques formally, what you do is you undercut the whole way in which content works, and you just get into mechanics. And as you keep opening and opening and opening and keep dusting away the content without focusing on it, without getting seduced in by its bottomless well of fascination, because we are all so fascinated with our own stories, you just start to get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter until your mind just lets it go. And you say, but how can I let it go? I didn't understand it. How can I let it go? I didn't work it out. How can I let it go? I didn't cathart it. How can I let it go? I mean, I can't let it go. That's my personal history. I've told about how once, several years ago, I had all these boxes of memorabilia, and every time I moved, I'd always have the shipping company move these boxes of old pictures and old love letters and important documents. And finally, I was moving again, and I had just moved about 4 times, and each time it's just shipping and storing, shipping and storing. And I thought, why am I doing this? It's as if I'm holding on to my past in case I run out of the future. Because in fact, I never open the boxes. I just mark them and move them and store them and then collect more and mark them and move them and store them. And I thought, I don't need them, so I'll burn them. I'll throw them away is what I decided. So I went through them and I threw it all in the trash can. And I found myself in the middle of the night out going through the trash can, because I woke up and I thought, oh my God, I threw away and I'd go out and I was going through, so I thought, no, I have to burn them. I mean, that's the only way to do it. So I started a fire in the fireplace, and I started throwing in these things, saying goodbye and throwing it, and I milked the drum, I'll never see your picture again, and I threw it away. And then one of my rascally friends brought me a big stack of pictures of Maharaji, and he says, you want to throw these in? And I said, well, no, I still need those. I'm still using those. And now if I look in my basement, I got rid of about 8 boxes then, but I notice I've collected more, and I have another 5 or 6 boxes down there now, at least, besides the books. And I'll probably have another burning. Because at both did I feel the sadness of losing my personal history, and also the lightness, and almost a surprising lightness of, I don't have that anymore. It's gone. It's gone. I'm free. I think all of us, when you look at people, you often see as like St. Nicholas. You know, they're carrying this big bag of personal history, and they come in and they set it down, and they're just exhausted. I mean, God, this is who I am, and this is who I've been, and this is who my father was, and my mother was, and this is, oh, God. I mean, you sit down on an airplane, and you just say, hello, and 4 hours later, the person has told you, they brought out all these, let me show you this one, and then I had this brother who, and then I had this, and they just, oh, you have this, let me show you this one. And it's interesting. Everybody just keeps reciting they keep reinforcing their models of their own existence over and over again. Let me recite this one. Oh, no, it's my turn. So I think when you ask the question why, it's less interesting for me now than just how do you get rid of it. Not why does it exist, but how do I get rid of it? I'm less interested in why I am the way I am than how to get on with it. And much more, I see where I'm going, and I let it pull me towards it, and I just keep discarding stuff, even though I don't understand why I had it in the first place. So you can hear the predisposition. At the same moment, as I say, there are moments when you are so right to let go of something. I mean, I realized at one point that I was in a jealous rage over a relationship. Just imagine that. I'm sure none of you have ever been, except I've done interviews with all of you, so I do know. But I was in a jealous rage over a relationship, and I was crying and screaming and hating and loathing, and I thought, this is really thick. See, that's the little cloud, the little blue sky saying, this cloud's really heavy duty. And I thought, this is such an old pattern. It's so familiar to me. And I don't have enough discipline in my technique yet to get around it. I need some help. And what happened was a guy called me on the phone who the year before I had seen, and he was such a mess. And he called me up and he sounded very light over the phone. And I said, why are you so light? You were such a mess. And he said, I've got this great Jungian therapist. I said, what's his name? I said, I'm going to go to him too. So I went to him. And we examined the situation, and then his mirroring allowed me to see some links, and I was so ripe for that at that moment that the minute I saw the link, something changed. And it changed for about 2 months. And after about 2-3 months, we had done what we could do at that moment. And what became apparent to both of us was that the work I had done on myself over the years, that I was a happier human being than he was. And then it became poignant. I mean, I was paying him, you know, so I finally said, don't you think this is ridiculous? And then we just became friends. And that was that one. But there was a moment that was ripe just to see those things and get a mirroring for it and let it go. Questions?
Yeah, there's questions from the Mind Traps section of the fear group.
Lovely group.
It's about substitution. How do we recognize patterns of self-deception, compulsion, or addiction? When we do recognize and try to change these, how can we avoid substituting an old one for a new one? Thank you. Is the search for enlightenment not yet another cover for our fear?
Now, just now, when I was silent in response to that, my awareness went through a series of stages. I heard the question. First of all, in my mind, I repeated the question so I could make sure I heard all the dimensions of it. That was the first part about the attachments and addictions of mind. How do we get to see them? How do we know that when we do something about it, we're not just substituting new ones? Isn't the search for enlightenment another one? Those were the 3 major components of your question. Then I saw myself starting to think about the answer. And then I said, not deep enough. And then I started to empty. All I did was go back to my breath, the rising and the falling of the breath in the abdomen. This was all happening just now. And then pretty soon, the whole thing was empty. In other words, no more mind structures. Not thinking emptiness, but just not. Just
right? The rising, the attention to the rising and falling was still another one that I was using to get rid of the first ones. But as I kept going in, then I just went into the rising and falling, and then there was just then out of that came this. Okay? Now, this is another structure of mind. What I'm saying to you now is another structure of mind. Do you hear what I'm saying? That is taking what you said and reorganizing it. The issue isn't that I have a structure of mind, because we are, the only way of interacting in the universe is through these structures. The issue is where one is in relation to them and how tightly one's holding on to them. Not that one has structures. Take, for example, the structure of trying to get enlightened. Now, trying to get enlightened is a structure. There's a great little story I must read you. A young boy traveled across Japan to the school of a famous martial artist. When he arrived at the dojo, he was given an audience by the sensei. "What do you wish from me?" the master asked. "I wish to be your student and become the finest karateka." Is that karateka? Yeah. "In the land," the boy replied. "How long must I study?" 10 years at least, the master answered. 10 years is a long time, said the boy. "What if I studied twice as hard as all your other students?" 20 years, replied the master. 20 years, replied the student. "What if I practiced day and night with all my effort?" 30 years, was the master's reply. "How is it that each time I say I will work harder, you tell me that it will take longer?" the boy asked. The answer is clear. When one eye is fixed upon your destination, there is only one eye left with which to find the way. Now, the stance one takes to become enlightened is a trap. It's a place you are that is not enlightened. It's a stance in which somebody is going somewhere. I'll meditate. You know, but as I told you the other day, the beautiful Ramakrishna image, when you have a thorn in your foot, one of the things if you're out in the woods you do is you take another thorn and you use the thorn to dig the first thorn out, and then you throw both thorns away. You don't save them. So in a way, understanding that all practices are traps of the mind, and you use a trap to get rid of another trap, but the way in which you take on the second trap is with intentionality and consciousness, and you see it as a trap I am using. While the first one you had learned so deeply, it seemed almost real. For example, most of the way you're thinking every day is so deep in, it feels like it's all reality. But as you keep doing the following of the breath, it keeps forcing you to see the way in which you're manufacturing the structure, the habitual structures of your own life. And as you go deeper and deeper, you begin to see the little ways in which the mind keeps recreating your own existence. That happens in the deeper meditation practice. Now, once that is all loosened up, then you've loosened up the old ones that were so deep in you didn't even notice they were there. Then the whole practice of following the breath is just another one you're going to let go of. You don't want to end up just being a breath follower. You want to end up being free, okay?
And what is important is that you have a kind of a light appreciation of the traps of expectations. As Hans said to me the other day, he said, expect the unexpected. It's a nice one. Always expect the unexpected, but that's still an expectation. And there's a great story of, you know, the Sufi sort of wise man named Nasruddin, who's really, he's like somebody that's kind of slovenly and always kind of seems like kind of stupid. But it's that incredible kind of wisdom that he has, that the Sufis know how to do so well. And Nasruddin was very unreliable and very undependable. And he went to his neighbor and he said to his neighbor, I would like to borrow a pot. I'm having my relatives in for dinner and I need a big pot. And the neighbor said, now, Nasruddin, you're very undependable and unreliable, and I really don't want to entrust my big pot to you. Nasruddin says, please, please, I promise I will bring it back tomorrow. I absolutely promise on Allah. And finally, the neighbor relented and said, all right, if you will bring it back tomorrow, I will give you the pot. Nasruddin took the pot, went home, had the feast. The next morning, he knocks at the door of the neighbor opens the door, and there is Nasruddin with a big pot. The neighbor says, Nasruddin, you brought back the pot. Nasruddin says, yes, of course. And the neighbor looks inside the big pot, and there's a little pot. And the neighbor says, what's the little pot doing there? Nasruddin says, the big pot had a baby. So Nasruddin was delighted, the neighbor was delighted, of course, and he said, oh, thank you, Nasruddin, and he took the pot, and he was so happy. About 2 weeks later, Nasruddin came to the door, and he said, I'm having another party. Could I borrow the pot, the big pot again? Now, be now in the neighbor's mind, you see. The neighbor says, of course you can, Nasruddin, all right? So Nasruddin takes the big pot, goes away. The next day,